Hello and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to today's webinar. As always, even though we try to start right on time, we are going to wait just a minute or two and let a few more folks get logged in and settled. So again, we will start shortly. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and get started. My name's Kathy Madison. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. I am one of the consultants at ComTech Services, but I also am the CIDM member liaison as well. So as you can see, we represent both ComTech and CIDM. They are one and the same. If you haven't figured that out yet, we are the same company. A lot of clients, and we don't always recommend DITA. However, we do specialize in helping people do a DITA migration as well. So it's a topic that is dear to our hearts here at ComTech. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as I go through our intro slides. On the CIDM slide, that's the member organization. It's an organization that allows you to network with other information developers, managers as well. It's not a DITA only organization. We have folks that are part of that that are not using DITA, and we have folks that are using DITA. It's not quite a 50-50 split, but CIDM, like I said, is the member organization. It's the part of our company that puts on webinars like this. It also puts on conferences, and we put out a newsletter. If you're not subscribed to our CIDM Matters newsletter, I encourage you to go to the Info Management Center or the ComTech Service Center and go ahead and subscribe to those newsletters so you can be informed of all the events and all the training that we have coming up. And again, we're pleased to be your sponsor for today's event or today's webinar. Just want to give you some hints at some upcoming workshops. On the left-hand side, we have the workshops that are non-DITA related that can benefit any information developer, minimalism, taxonomy, and a new class that we have, Editing Essentials for Writers and Editors. That's a brand new class. And of course, all of these classes are online until we can start doing them in person. So these are all online classes. And on the right-hand side, we have our two DITA classes that we will have upcoming. We just started a bunch of DITA classes. We are in the process of DITA Basics and Advanced Reuse right now. So those courses are going on this fall, and then starting next January and in spring, we'll have two additional DITA classes for you to take if you're interested in DITA, because you're here to learn about the conversion strategies. On our conferences side, we just wrapped up a fascinating Convex, which was great, our very first virtual experience for information developers. And we are going to learn from some of the things that we did at Convex, and we are going to do an all virtual best practices conference. And this conference is typically geared for the information management or information development managers. And so we are going to make this best practices more of a workshop for managers. So not a bunch of presentations, which we're excited. We're going to have some presentations, more about that coming soon. We're still working out those logistics on that. On the webinar scene, we do have a few more webinars scheduled this year, and we encourage you to go to the Info Dev website to register for these upcoming webinars. And with that, I want to just, before I turn it over to Helen, I want to remind people of the logistics. Now that most of you are on, I think people are catching on that we always do an intro, so they tap in about 5 minutes in. But we are going to record this webinar, and Helen will take questions at the end of her presentation. She thinks her presentation will be about 45 minutes, so that will give us plenty of time for in-depth questions. And if you do have questions for her, please type them in your questions dialog box, and I will field those at the end. So with that, I think I've got all the logistics down, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Helen. She has been a technical editor and is now the conversion service manager there at Stilo. She's worked there. She'll fill you in on the details, but we were chatting before and it seems like a very long time she's been there working on helping people do conversions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and make her the presenter. Okay, Helen, it should be all yours now.
Thanks, Kathy. Hopefully that is now sharing.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, thanks for that intro. It has been actually 20 years that I've been at Stilo. So I just had my 20-year anniversary not that long ago. So Stilo has been in the business of content processing, taking unstructured content and bringing it into structure since the 1980s, since before XML was a gleam in anybody's eyes. So recently, in the past decade or more, one of the things we focused on is helping people get their legacy content. And when I say legacy content, I really mean content that's in legacy formats into structured content, primarily DITA XML. So that's who Stilo is. This is me, so I won't read you what's on the screen because you don't care anyway. I have, as I said, I've been doing this for a number of years. I've worked with many different customers, different source formats, different reasons for moving to DITA, different timelines for doing it. Some people had specializations, some had elaborate specializations, some had small specializations, lots of different levels of DITA expertise. So a lot of variety of people that I've worked with in different circumstances. But there's a few things that tend to be in common. By the way, the stats on this page are a bit out of date. It says I've helped convert tens of thousands. Well, that's out of date by a few years now. However, the picture on this page, that's still exactly what I look like. And because we're all confined to quarters these days, there's nobody that can say otherwise. Okay, so on to the presentation. The presentation is entitled The Downsides of a Poor DITA Conversion, but I actually prefer to think of it more as the upsides to a good DITA conversion. So you can get a quick and easy conversion sometimes. So for example, some systems will allow you to take a Word document and upload it directly into the system. It'll do an on-the-fly conversion. It'll look good. It will break everything out into topics, and it will just work. And Bob's your uncle, and it looks great. And I've seen them, and they do look great, and you can use it right away. So this is great. There'd be other formats. So some of your legacy formats might allow you to export to DITA, and you will get DITA from it. Oops, I want to go back the other way. This gets away from me. So I would say that if your actual content is legacy and you don't need to change it, you're just going to use it the same way, just because you still need it to support legacy products, then this is fine and go for it. Or also, if it's only a small amount of content, this might be okay. You might push it in and say, okay, we can use it immediately. We can go back in later and fix it up if we want to. So I would say also fine, but just remember you have a day job, and the going in and fixing it up later might not happen as quickly as you think it will. So there are definitely occasions when this might be just fine, but I suspect that there are times when you're going to want something a little bit more. So when you think about why you are going to DITA, so there's a number of reasons. Sometimes you're in the process of an entire migration from all of your documentation from whatever you did before into a brand new DITA environment. So you've already established what you hope to get from it. Sometimes you're taking legacy content or content in legacy formats and bringing it into an already existing DITA environment. Let's say you've been merged with another company or so on. So in some cases, the motivation, the impetus is just get that content out of the system it's in and into the new one as quickly as possible so the old one can go away. But even so, the reason for having that DITA environment in the first place has to do with getting some of these common benefits that people are looking for. So among the most commonly quoted benefits that people are hoping to achieve, we want to save time and money on authoring and on maintaining the content because we're going to be able to reuse it. We want to save money and time on translation and localization, globalization. That's a huge money pit right there. So if we can save time on that, if we're translating a lot, that's huge. That's one of the primary reasons for going to DITA. We also are hoping to be able to make sure that we improve. Okay, this is driving me crazy. Improved accuracy and consistency because we'll be able to change things in just one place and have it propagated. We'll improve our time to market, and we'll improve the user experience, which is a thing that is sometimes overlooked because it is more difficult to calculate an ROI. Not impossible, but it is important. We want our docs to be usable. It will reduce calls to support. It will possibly help it function as marketing material. So we do want some benefits from the DITA. So the out-of-the-box conversion will get you topics and will get you stuff that you can use right away, which is great, but it may not get you everything you need. So for example, one of the first things we'll find is that typically we rely on headings in the source document to indicate topics. We all do. Every type of conversion is going to do that because it's the most logical and very, very useful thing. However, we know that this is not a perfect system because, you know, sometimes authors make mistakes, and sometimes a paragraph will end up being authored with the wrong paragraph style, and then somebody will go back and make it look right by doing some inline styling. So what you see here is a picture that has come from one of my sample demo documents, and it looks like a heading. And if you saw the Word document, you would think that was a heading too, the same as all the other headings. But it's not. It's a normal paragraph with inline styling, so that would be likely to be missed as a heading. So you wouldn't get a topic breakout there. So what you'd end up with is at the end of the previous topic, you would just end up with a paragraph with a bold span in it. So the other thing is that if you've got HTML-based input formats, quite often you'll end up with one topic per HTML file. So you won't get all the files, all the topics broken out that you really should. And once again, instead of a heading, you're going to end up with a paragraph, possibly bold. You quite likely won't get topic typing. So topic typing is obviously one of the pillars of DITA. It's the information typing architecture. So what will tend to happen with these out-of-the-box conversions is you might get all concepts or all topics. You may get some topic typing, but I wouldn't count on it necessarily. So what will tend to happen is you'll get a topic, your lists will look like lists. So if it's a numbered list in the input, it's going to be a numbered list in the DITA most of the time. And that's not always what you want. So the DITA would come out looking possibly like this. So it's just a concept, and we've got an ordered list. Well, it's going to still look right when you publish it. It's going to look the same. So why do we care about the topic typing? Well, there's a few reasons. One of the things is ease of use. So your user who is busy just wants to know how to delete a rule. So if they look at a task and the task is deleting a rule, they know that's what they want. They aren't going to be bothered with concepts. They just want to find out how to do their task. If they want to look up something to know what we mean when we talk about a context test, for example, they're going to know to look in a reference topic. So that is one of the things that is important in topic typing. As well, when you localize, when you publish, when I publish a task, let's say, you're going to have some strings that are populated by your style sheet. And these will vary according to the language that you're producing. And if you don't have a task, these won't show up. So you're going to be missing some of that. And then there's just a consistent look and feel that you hope to get. So when we publish our task, we put this little toolbox logo beside the title for some reason. And consistent look and feel is important. You may miss some of your inline markup as well. So if it's bold in the input, it's going to be bold on the output. So it's still going to look like that. However, just looking like that, it may not be good enough. It may look fine when you publish a PDF and it's English and it's just fine. However, it's possible that, especially if you are localizing, something like this might not be rendered the same way in another location. I don't know why this is jumping. The separator might be something different besides those chevrons. So what we actually want is a menu cascade with each of these UI controls separated. And you see there is no separator specified in the DITA. So that's what we hope for. If we've got things like syntax diagrams, we could just publish that and have it bold and have all of those brackets and parentheses come out just the way they are, and it would look the same, but actually it should be a syntax diagram. We want this to make sure that we can always format these things in the same way, no matter where we see them. It's going to make it easier for the person reading to understand what's going on. Because some of these syntax diagrams look just nuts. Tables. So if you've got a table, chances are it's going to come out as a table, probably look just fine. But quite often, you know, a table shouldn't be a table. It's a table in your source because for layout reasons. But in fact, it should not be a table. So this is an example where we've got two related tasks shown side by side in a table. But we actually really don't want a table in the DITA. We want two tasks. So I could just strip out the table, but I do need to make sure that that first column becomes a task and then the second column becomes another task. So what I will end up with is topic refs to each of these two tasks in my map, and then each of those will be a task. The title will be what was the content of the first row, and then the content that was in the cells below that will be the steps in that task. So we do end up with correct task topics coming out of that table. This is another example. I kind of like this example. This is a task basically, and I'm not showing the whole thing, it's just a screenshot of the top of it. But essentially it's got the instructions and it's got the diagram showing you what the instructions are referring to. And it looks fine, it would work just fine the way it is in a Word document, but in DITA, we have to have the instruction come first. So the step will have a command, and then after the command, optionally an info element where you can put things like illustrations. So we not only need to make this table into a task, we need to flip the order of the content. So this is what we want to end up with. So over here we have what the output looks like. So we have the title, we have a step, we have the illustration here, and then the second step with the appropriate illustration. So we've got the command, we've got the info, and then close the step and go on to the next step. So that's what we're hoping to get. So we have proper DITA tasks coming out. This is another thing that can be the bane of someone's existence, to be honest. Nested tables. So this is a Word document that is formatted in tables. This is the way it would look because it wouldn't have all the grid lines shown, but this is actually a bunch of tables. So this is it with the tables shown, with the grid lines shown. And we can see that it's actually 4 nested levels of tables. Now, nested tables are frowned upon in DITA. Your CCMS might just reject it out of hand, might say that's not valid, you can't have that. You can produce legal DITA with nested tables if you put each table inside a paragraph tag or something like that, but it's not a best practice for sure. So what we want to do is to take this and we want to make a topic from each of these rows. This is going to be a reference with a definition list because we can see that that's what this is here. We're going to have we're going to keep this as a table because this is tabular information. So this little table in here stays a table. And this is the title of its topic. And then we're going to have a task because we have steps. We have a step result here. And in here, we've got another table that we're going to make into a choice table. So this is the map. So it's going to refer to our 3 topics. There's our reference with our definition list, which when you publish it is quite likely to come out formatted as if it were a table, though it need not. And that's one of the great things is that we are now separating format from meaning. So we can do anything we like with that. And this is the next topic. So it's concept, and we have a table. And we have a task with a choice table inside and a result at the end. So we have a step result and a result of the task as well. And all of those things can come out of that horrible nested table mess. So we do get good data out of something that really didn't seem to lend itself to DITA. This is what it looks like in PDF, but this is just a very out of the box rendition. It doesn't have any of the strings or anything that we would expect to see. So one of the other things that we see in quite a lot of the source documentation is conditional text. And now this is really important because conditions are going to help us be able to reuse the content that we have. So there's different ways to specify conditional text in different inputs, of course. So RoboHelp, for example, has conditional text in the content of the topics. It also has build tags. So the build tags would be applied to the entire HTML file. Conditional text we will find in FrameMaker or RoboHelp or Flare or any of those things. Come back. So what we see here is this red text has been given the condition comment in FrameMaker. And this is a build tag coming from a RoboHelp topic. So the content of this build tag is employee care topic. So we know that this HTML file would be published in something that was designed for employee care topics. Otherwise, it would be left out. So when we convert this, there's a couple of things we can do. So I took the comment conditional text, and I just made it into a paragraph with the other props attribute with the value comment. So that's kind of the quick and easy default method so that we are preserving that condition, and then you can do with that condition what you want. With the RoboHelp, I instead took that build tag and I created an audience attribute and made it employee care. So, and I've applied that to the topic ref in the map, and I've applied it to each topic ref that is coming out of that HTML file. Okay, so user-defined variables. So again, many input formats will have the ability to define variables. So FrameMaker does, RoboHelp does, Flare does, a bunch of them do. So in this case, I've got a FrameMaker example where I've made the company name a variable. The company I work for has changed its name several times since I've been with it, and 2 or 3 times before that. So company name as a variable isn't a stretch. And the RoboHelp example, I've just shown a couple of examples of variables that are coming from the variables file in RoboHelp. So we take those variables and we make them into keys. So the keys allow an indirect reference to these values. So my company name key now points to a keyword that says bird's eye. My DITA references the key, company name. Now I can then change the value of that to whatever I need according to what I'm publishing. So the reference stays the same, the source file stays the same, but the value of that variable can change accordingly. Same with the RoboHelp example. So this makes our content that much easier to reuse, much easier. The other thing is that these examples are using variables that currently exist in the document. It's also possible to just look for specified phrases, a word or a couple of words that we know are going to occur. We can look for those in the text and extract them and map them to keys as long as we know what they are. So the easiest way is to do it if there are variables existing, but if there are not, we can still do something along those lines. There's also other methods of reuse that we have encountered in some of the input files. So text insets or snippets are reusable text. So what we've done in the RoboHelp example, there's one example of a table that shows up in a couple of different places in the project, and it's stored in a snippet file. And the name of the snippet file is contentfiltering.hts. And in the HTML, this is what it looks like. So the equivalent in DITA would be a conref. So I want to make that table into a DITA conref. So I've pulled it out, I've put it into a reuse warehouse topic, and I've given that table the ID based on its file name. So that the next time I hit that very same thing in the content, it's going to refer to the very same thing. And anytime I see it in any of the content, it's still referring to that same snippet file. It's going to come out with this reference inside the DITA. So it's always going to come out referring to that same conref. Now, having said all of that, of course, a snippet can contain anything. So it can contain a tiny little thing, a big thing, a table, or it can contain multiple elements. So DITA reuse is element-based. So if I have a table and then a list, let's say, and a paragraph after that, what I'm going to end up doing is creating a conref for each of those elements. And where I've got content filtering.hts 0001, I would have 0002. So it would all still work. It may or may not be the best approach. I would suggest that one of the things that can be done also as part of the process of converting your legacy documentation is after it's converted to go through and do a deduplication run to get rid of these things, to keep them, but not to have duplicates of them. So we could deduplicate the full topic, for example, or any of these things that we felt should be reused. There's a bunch of other stuff that's not visible when you look at your content, first of all, but that contains useful information that you're going to want or possibly want to keep as metadata when you move to DITA. So there could be markers in your document that allow you to build an index. So this is an example of what it looks like in Word with the field codes on. Oops, I did that again. So it's got the field codes on, and that's going to be an index. Index term would be tables. And the FrameMaker one looks like this. So it's an index term, and I've got to set a recovery key. So I can make those into index terms in the prologue of the topic where they are found. You can build an index. Alternatively, I could make them into keywords. So those are things that are worth preserving. If you've gone to the trouble of putting them in there, we can keep them for you. So there's other things too that you wouldn't normally be aware of. So there are properties in the Word document that you can look at. Some of them are automatically created. Some of them you go in and add yourself. So I've got all, for example, the dates, the created date and the last modified date. That's something you may want to keep. I've got authors and last modified by. These things are produced automatically. I may not care about size or number of pages, certainly, or even words, but I can put in a title. I can put in some tags of various sorts that I can use for whatever I want. I can put in a status, I can put in categories, and I can use all that information to populate any of the metadata that I'm interested in. And I did discover that FrameMaker has similar things as well. So when I opened up the properties of a sample document that came with the FrameMaker, I saw that this particular one had been authored by Bernard Ashwanden. Hi, Bernard. You can see that we do get access to author and title, subject, created date, and modified date. So if we want to be able to preserve those in the metadata, we can. If it's in the input, we can find it. There's other things that may be in the headers and the footers and the master pages of your document as well. So I just took this little snippet from that same sample FrameMaker document, and it's got the date, as you can see, in the page number, but it has this number in the middle as well. So this might be a document ID. There could be all kinds of other information that's in there as well: product info, version numbers, categories, alternate titles, lots of things that can be stored in there. So these things might be very useful for us to keep. Oh yeah, so if you've got equations and images in your document, you've spent some time in either in Word or in FrameMaker creating these equations. You've spent some time putting callouts on top of your images. The quick and easy conversion is going to have these coming out looking gorgeous, but they will be flattened into an image. So they won't be editable. Maybe that's fine. For some purposes it is. But if you need these to be editable, you need for those equations to come out as MathML. So I created this thing, which is, well, it's an equation because it has an equal sign, but honestly, don't try to figure out what I'm trying to say there, because I'm not trying to say anything. I just wanted to make a little pretty picture. So I created that, and then I created the XML, the MathML from it. So you can see it's all there. It looks like gobbledygook, but it does render. At the bottom, it shows what it shows in my browser. And again, image callouts. Now, quite often, this is not going to be what it looks like. It's going to be a screenshot or a diagram with callouts over it, maybe text, arrows, numbers, and so on. So that will come out as all one image. And if that never needs to be edited, there's nothing wrong with that. But if it might need to be edited at some point, then it is worthwhile trying to make sure we can preserve it's editable. So this particular image here, I took out of that same sample FrameMaker document, and you can see that this text is editable because here I've just edited it by making it smaller. So it's editable in FrameMaker, but when you export it, it becomes a JPEG. So now it's not editable. So if we want to be able to edit it, it's perhaps better to create an SVG that can be edited. It may not always be better because possibly your production system doesn't support SVGs. Most of them do now, but for a while it was a rarity. But you can see that this is all I've shown is the little piece of the XML that represents that first piece of text that says plus warm. And it's got all this other information about it. So if it says bold, I could make it unbold. It's got a color, I could change the color, I could change the text right there in the XML, or obviously in an SVG editor. So we can edit that and make it translatable, or do whatever I needed to. If the interface changed at all, we used a different word besides warm, we could change that. So that is something that would be an advantage over just the straight JPEG that comes out. The other thing too is that we'll notice if we go back to the JPEG, it's named, we've actually got the name of the file it came from, and then just a number. You know, if the file that it comes from is called introduction, we've got introduction1.jpg in this document and introduction1 in the next document, etc., etc. These are going to be difficult to find after the fact. So another thing that could be done is anytime an image has a caption, this probably wouldn't be one of those times, but if the image has a caption, the image could have its file name created by using that caption. That would be for any images that are imported by copy rather than linked, because the linked ones will still have their file names. But embedded images, when they come out, are just going to end up with a numbered file name unless we do something. And the last but not least thing, this is actually really quite important in DITA, is relationship tables. So relationship tables are important because you want to be able to reuse individual topics in a variety of different configurations. So you don't want to have links broken. So if I have this topic and there's all these links at the bottom of it, and then I want to reuse this topic, but I want to reuse it in a smaller document that is only concerned with sick pay and health and safety, and it doesn't really have anything to do with grievances or discipline or anything of that sort. So if it's strictly a sickness document, these other links are going to end up broken. So this is where we can extract the links from the topic. So when we publish the topic all by itself, there's nothing there. When we publish it in a map, we will get links at the bottom of the topic to any of these things that actually exist in the map. So we will have a relationship table. This is a very simple one, 2 columns, source and target. So the first column would be the topic in which the links occur, and the second one would be the target of the link. And again, I've just shown the one row there. So these are very important. So this is an example of the output from a different relationship table, a little bit fancier. So you can see that it's got 3 columns showing here, 1 column per topic type. So again, I've just shown a little bit of a little bit of the row actually of the relationship table. But what we can do is we can put different types of attributes on these. So we can put the topic refs in groups, make them a family. So here, if I have adding a test file being produced, then all of these other tasks are going to show up in its relationship table in its links afterwards. Or I can have them just the target only, so individual, so they'd be individually added. So this just makes it easier to publish all the links I need as I need them, not publish anything with broken links. And I will say creating these things by hand is not fun. So as much of it as you can do as part of your conversion effort, so much the better. Of course, it's great if all the links come at the end of the topic, which they often will. And some of the things that are meant for online publication in the first place, they often will. However, a lot of times we will see links that show up as part of the text, and that's tougher because you can't just lift them out. Your text isn't going to make sense anymore. Conversion is not designed to reauthor. Now, you may in fact prefer to reauthor things like this, and far be it from me to say that you shouldn't. Ideally, you probably would want to reauthor and reorganize, keeping in mind, every page is page one. You don't know where in your content the person is going to land first. However, if you can't do that right now, don't want to do that now, there is another way of doing it. So we could take this example. This is a paragraph from a piece of text. It tells us where to go to find more information. We've got the link, and then on page 7, really we have to do something about this for sure. So what we can do is we can take this content, this is what would show up in the cell of the rel table. So we've got the href, so we're linking to the topic we're interested in. And then we've taken this text in front of it and put it in a short description. So as long as recommended sequence doesn't have a short description of its own, this text would show up when we float over the link. So we know what recommended sequence is going to tell us. And then we would take the cross-reference out of the text, but we could leave the text behind so that it doesn't break the flow as you're reading. Or we could lift it out. But in this case, we could leave it. And then we could also just automatically delete that on page 7. So now this is much more reusable. So of course, we would have to make sure that we get these things in such a way that they do make sense. I would think that reauthoring is often going to be a better option. However, there are things you can do to help with that because, let's face it, we all have day jobs. So I bet you there's probably millions of other things that we could talk about that are important in a good DITA conversion, but those are the ones that seem the most significant to me, the reasons why it's important to get a good DITA conversion out of the box, or if you can, rather than trying to do it after the fact. It's worth planning to do a good, thorough DITA conversion as part of your process so that you can get the benefits that you hope to get from DITA. So that's really all I have to say at the moment, but I'm very happy to take questions.
All right, thanks, Helen. Very enlightening stuff there. If you do have questions for Helen, like I said, we have certainly the full another looks like 40 minutes. You're welcome to keep questions coming to her, or if you need to drop off, just a reminder, we are going to this is being recorded, and you'll be able to hear those questions if you have to drop off on the hour. So the first question is related to, you talked about all of these techniques, to make it a good conversion to start with, and there's less cleanup. Do you have any idea of what percentage of cleanup time should be allocated in your conversion process? Whether you do it before or do it after, is there any kind of guideline you can provide there?
So I'm going to say it's very tough to provide something that would apply to everybody, because honestly, it's going to depend a great deal on your own content, partly on the source format and partly on just how old it is. A lot of people do prefer to do cleanup on the source format first of all, rather than once it's in DITA. Our process does give you access to a rules editor, so you can make overrides to the conversion process quite easily. So that will actually help reduce the amount of cleanup post conversion. We have found that we can reduce the necessity for post conversion cleanup significantly. I can't say that we would absolutely eliminate it altogether. Now, somewhere, somebody does have statistics on a project that was done where and it did give examples of how much cleanup was actually ended up being required after the fact. A certain amount of cleanup was done before, but as I say, it would vary a lot depending on the nature of your input. I think things like FrameMaker, there tends to be less cleanup needed beforehand, typically, because it lends itself to consistent formatting. Whereas Word really gives you a lot of freedom, and so you will get more variation. Some of the HTML-based formats mostly don't require much cleanup, but occasionally, because of the fancy things they do, they will. So this is not a very, probably not a useful answer. What I always say is you can always send us a sample. We are always happy to look at it. We can give you some feedback on what kind of cleanup might be necessary. We can show you how we do some of these processes. We're always happy to, talk about your own individual requirements.
Sounds good. All right, so there is the first question we had also had to do with what tools do you recommend for doing the initial conversion? So they must have missed the very beginning part of your presentation, but talk a little bit about what tools are out there.
Right, okay, so the one single tool that I will recommend, because, I like my job, Stilo's Migrate. It is, it's an online, in the cloud conversion, I want to say service. It's a tool. So the way it works is we take your source content, or you take your source content, you upload it to the Migrate portal. We run it through the conversion process. You download the output, and off you go. Now, however, to be more specific, what we do is we will create a set of rules that will guide the conversion. The rules will be based on your input, so you don't have to make a template to conform with what we want. We will make the rules to conform with what you have. We will configure the output to what you need as close as we possibly can. So then you would upload your content, the process would apply the rules and produce the output according to your specifications, your DTDs, and so on. If there were things in there that got missed or didn't come out the way you wanted, or if you changed your mind about something, we have a rules editor that would allow you to go in and make changes to the rules. You can reconvert, no extra cost, and re-download and examine your output again until you're perfectly happy with it. So this is actually where we end up saving people a lot of time on the post-conversion cleanup, is with the rules editor, because you can go in and make little changes that fix things. Sometimes a tiny little change in the rules will make a big change in the structure of the output that will save hours and hours of possible cleanup. So yeah, Stilo Migrate. You can send us an example of your content if you would like to see a demo of how it works. We're always happy to do that. If you send us a small example, we'll demo it for you and we'll give you the data output that we get from that demo.
Sounds good. Related to that, and I think you already answered it, but they want to know, is it possible to customize any conversion templates?
Yeah, so for sure. So basically the way we do the customization is we customize the rules. So you don't need to create a template for your input other than any template it's already in. We would just create the rules template based on what you have. Also, as I say, any configurations for your output that you need, so how you want your map structured, things like that. Lots of choices in DITA, lots of things to choose from. So we would take those requirements and put that into your portal as well. So, so it would end up being quite customized. If you have more than one variety of document, you can make more than one rule set to apply to different types of documents.
Okay. So when you bring things in, when submitting, conversion content, is it best to bring it in the native format, like the original frame files, or PDF?
It is always better the original format. So if it was FrameMaker, I would say you save it as .mif, and because that's the interchange format, that's the format that software can read. That's much better than PDF. PDF loses, I mean, it looks great, but it tends to lose things like whereabouts the text actually is and so on. So yeah, the source format is better if you have it.
Okay, and what happens if you have sources from many locations? Do you set up different rules for each one of those scenarios, or talk a little bit about that situation?
Yeah, so quite often we will have documentation coming in from all over the place where people have done things slightly differently. Sometimes we can make the rules flexible enough to apply to all of them or more than one of them. Sometimes we do find it's better to make a separate rule set. So what we would probably do is take the first rule set we got, then we would clone it and then just make changes to it. Because occasionally, we've had examples where in a Word document, you can put the table caption or the figure caption either before or after the figure or the table. And if you've got rules that are expecting it to be before the table, and then you've got one where it's after, that's a case where it actually will give you better results to have a different rule set. But most of the time we can create one rule set that's flexible enough to look after more than one variety.
Okay. So I know you gave lots of examples during your presentations of how things convert. So this question is, besides just pattern matching on geruns and headings,
Mm-hmm.
for example, what else can your rules process look at in the source content to be able to properly type the conversion topic?
So again, this is something that will vary by your content, but typically we will find that we can identify what should be steps. And if we can say this is a step, migrate is a schema-driven conversion. So if we say make this a step, migrate's going to look at it and say, is a step allowed here? Okay, then this better be a task. So it will make a task, it will make a step, it will make sub-steps and so on. So it can calculate what the topic type is based on the content of the topic, as long as we have some clues as to what that content is. So that's pretty important. There's other things that we can look at as well, besides things like gerunds. So for example, in CLI documentation, we find lots of topic titles start with a lowercase letter because they are commands. So we can look at that and say, okay, that's a reference. We can also set it so that any topic that has no steps, but it has a table is a reference. So we do have lots of things that we can use. One other thing that we do suggest, because we can typically tell a task from a concept, but a reference from a concept is trickier. We don't always get that automatically. So a marker can be put into the FrameMaker, for example, that we can pick up and say, this is a reference, and then let Migrate figure out the rest for itself. So there's a bunch of things that we can use. I've used RoboHelp templates because people have had different templates for their tasks. We can see what kind of template has been used. And so if it's a task template, well, then we make it a task. So there's lots of different ways. We do have access to quite a bit of information coming out of those documents.
Okay, I'm trying to group similar questions. There's a lot coming in here. So are the conversion tools able to handle Word documents, which you gave a couple examples there, and
Yes.
and identify the appropriate topic types and elements? So I think you.
Yes. So again, Word could be anything, right? So, but yes. So depending on how consistent the styling is, that's just going to determine how easy it is to write the rules. But if the styling is not consistent, it might be trickier to write the rules, but it can be done. I've done demonstrations before of creating DITA coming out of a Word file that had absolutely no paragraph styling whatsoever. Not that I recommend that, but we do have all kinds of other information that we can get out. So we are pretty good at identifying the topic types and the different elements within a Word file. Especially, we work with customers to say, what should this be and what should that be? And then we just make the rules accordingly.
Okay. What about content reuse? Does Stilo do anything about looking at identifying repeated content and then convert that into a reuse mechanism?
So we do that. It's not part of the conversion of each individual document. What we do is we could take all of the documents that you've converted and compare them to each other. So when we convert, we're looking at one document at a time, essentially. But after the conversion, we can take all of those documents and compare them. And anything that is identical, we can just extract to be reused. Again, things that are identical, we would want to have some guidance as to what sort of things you want to reuse. Do you just want to reuse every paragraph that's exactly the same? Possibly not. But if you want to look for notes that are the same, we can do that. If you want to look for topics that are the same, obviously, that sort of thing. So that we do separately, and stay tuned for something coming up as an enhancement to Migrate that will allow us to do some of it as part of the conversion process as well, right in Migrate. Coming up soon to a theater near you.
Okay. You mentioned, this is earlier in your presentation, what is a deduplication run? What is a deduplication run?
Okay, so that's exactly what we were just talking about. That's what I meant by that. So we take all those converted DITA topics and maps, and we would run them through our deduplication system, and we would find the matches. And we find identical and near identical matches as well. So you would have the choice to say, yeah, that actually should be the same thing. So when we deduplicate, what we do is, if it's a topic, we choose the one version of it, and we make all the other maps point to that topic. We might move the topic out into a separate folder, so every map points to it in that folder. So we update the maps, we update the topic refs. If it's a note, let's say, or a section or something like that, something smaller than a topic, we would create a conref file. We would extract that element from where it exists in the DITA and replace it with a link to the conref file. We would create the conref file, and everywhere it occurs in the content that we say, yes, deduplicate, 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 it's all of them will have that link in there. So that's what I meant by deduplication. And again, it's possible also to look at close matches and decide if some of those should be deduplicated, as well as just the ones that actually are identical.
Okay. We had a couple questions on cost or general estimates. One was related to just doing those special customizations that you talked about on the rules, and the other is related to more of a general cost for a conversion, for example, a range of cost per 100 pages. But I suspect you're going to be able to say, it depends.
Well, you're right. It does depend. And I'm actually not the person that, I'm not the right person to ask about pricing. The sales folks do all of that. They don't let me sell things because I tend to give things away. I say, you need this? Here, have it. So yeah, they don't let me do that. So I am not the best person to talk about pricing, but do contact us because we do have people that would be happy to answer those questions. In terms of customizing, the one thing that does cost extra is if you have DITA specialization, we need to incorporate your specialized DTD into the portal. So that's a little bit of extra work. So that's a little bit extra. But configuring the rules in the first place and having the configurations to your specifications, that's all part of the initial setup. That's not extra. So we try to make sure that we don't come back with any surprises for you once we give you pricing.
Okay. All right, now here's some that are, one more that's specific to Migrate, and then we've got a couple more wrap up that are more general questions about migration and tools. So this one is, which are the latest improvements that have been introduced in the Stilo migration tool?
Okay. So, gosh, there, it tends to come in little annotations that do various things that we didn't do before, like that switching of the row of the tables and so on. like I say, watch out for the next big one, which is going to have something to do with deduplication. That's coming soon. Of course, we do DITA 1.3, which I guess everybody does that now. They should. Let me see what else is really new and exciting. Oh, that's going to be the big one. Is I would say you watch out for the deduplication that's coming. There have been it's kind of constant updates.
Yeah, and I guess Marco, if you have a specific thing you're looking for, maybe you can reach out directly to Helen there at contact.
Oh yes, please do.
Yeah. Okay, so here's one that said, early on in your presentation, you mentioned the main reason to moving to DITA had to do with translations to other language.
Yes.
And they want to know a little bit more how that's accomplished if the original content is in English.
Well, so once you have your English content, then you would presumably engage a translation vendor who would do the translations for you. And then what the nice thing is with DITA is because it is components, once you have a translation, when you make changes, the only thing that needs to be translated is the new change, and that will be separated from the rest of the content. So you don't have to send everything all out to be translated every time you make a small change. Of course, you do have to consider if you are translating and you want to use keys, for example, or keyrefs to small pieces of content, you would have to consider whether those two things work together, because if you stick a translated piece of text inside another language, does it make sense? Does it have the right pronoun? Does it have the right article? That sort of thing. But that's how it would save you money, is that you don't have to translate each and every piece of content every time you update something or make a change.
Right, and as well as the reuse mechanisms, if you do have high reuse content, that also helps with the translation cost.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Okay, here's one, again, not directly related to migration, but related. What suggestions do you have if moving from one DITA tool to another? Any peculiarly, I'm not going to get that word out today. Anything you should look out for in tool implementations that may affect your conversion from one tool to another?
Gosh, this is not my particular area of expertise, one DITA tool to another DITA tool. I would say that this might be a good opportunity to do a bit of cleanup along the way, since you have to take all this stuff out and then put it up somewhere else. You're going to have it all out of your system at some point. Not a bad opportunity to look at your reuse strategy. Possibly deduplicate the content that you have and see what's crept in. But like I say, that's not my particular area of expertise in DITA storage tools, I'm afraid.
Right, and certainly we as the CIDM folks tend to know all of the tools, so we have a good understanding often of what you need to look out for there. So just get to put a plug in for us there on that one.
Yes, contact Kathy about that.
Yeah. All right. So we do have a comment. Thanks for the great presentation. And usually when I say we're wrapping up, a bunch more questions come in. But right now we are getting kudos. Excellent webinar. Thank you, Helen and CIDM. So that's great. If you do have other questions for them, of course, you can still type them in. We'll be here for just a little bit longer. Or you do see the email there, contact@stilo.com, and you could forward your questions off for them. And as a reminder, Stilo, of course, as she said, they'll look at example content. They'll do a specific demo with you. So certainly you could reach out to them at any time. And you are going to be at the Lava Conference, LavaCon next week as well. So I forgot to put that plug,
Yes,
as well as ComTech is. So both of us will be there. So
yeah.
if you are not conferenced out and are planning to go to LavaCon, you can also chat with both companies there as well. Yeah, so any other questions for Helen? I think that's it. Excellent job, Helen. And we'll talk to you virtually soon. And for
Yeah,
everybody
great.
still on the line, we'll get that link out to you for the recording.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
All right. Cheers, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.